I swear I will never understand the fans' obsession. The dude had like 2 lines and he looks kind of cool, I guess. Can we just get off his dick already? Okay, so specializations. The core book gives us the stealthy, high crit dealing assassin, the tough, intimidating, close quarters fighting, tech-savvy gadgeteer, and the outdoorsy and tracker-focused survivalist. This book adds the martial artist, the operator, and the skip tracer. First, let's start with the martial artist. The martial artist is, as you might imagine, a hand-to-hand damage dealer, which is kind of like the marauder specialization from the hired gun career. The big difference being a marauder is best for creating a really beefy character that relies on brute force. The martial artist, on the other hand, is best for creating a more graceful and skilled character. Now, while it's true that they do focus on unarmed combat and have a few talents which will only apply to that, there are also plenty of talents which will apply to melee as well. So much so that if you wanted to focus on melee and create a melee-focused character who relies on their skill and agility, that's pretty easy to do. In fact, most, though not all, of the unarmed-only talents are pretty avoidable. I like that there's a fair amount of variety here, like there's some crowd control in the form of staggering opponents, or making it so it's more difficult for them to maneuver. That one, grapple, is my personal favorite. But the crown jewel talent for this specialization is obviously the Precision Strike series, which, holy shit, wow. Basically, under certain circumstances, you can decide what critical injury you inflict. It is fan-fucking-tastic. I love it. I also like that, unlike with Marauder, this tree focuses on a wider variety of characteristics, not just brawn. A martial artist is going to get a lot more mileage out of a build that includes a strong agility and will as well. Next we have the Operator, which is basically the bounty hunter's piloting spec. But it's kind of hard to talk about the Operator without also comparing it to the piloting spec from the Smuggler's Career or the Ace Career. So if you have either of those core books, feel free to follow along. So your piloting spec is all about piloting vehicles. Mostly starships, but also land vehicles as well. Really, it's your typical dogfighter. They have lots of defensive talents that deal with evading fire, and offensive talents that are all about just doing as much damage as possible. And almost zero talents that actually help you outside of the cockpit. The Operator's in some ways more broad, some ways more specialized. Really, they're not even a piloting specialization at all. They're a chaser. They're all about chasing a target, or running away from it. Running to something or away from something. That's what this is all about. And they do that at every level, from being on foot to all the way up in space and anything in between. They don't have quite the starship capability that a pilot has. They trade a bit of flying and navigating in space for a bit of flying and navigating on land, as well as talents that allow them to better chase or run away from a target on foot. And the offensive talents are actually my favorite part, especially offensive driving. It allows you to add penalties to their piloting checks. So if you're in an asteroid, typically you would use piloting checks to try to avoid those asteroids or to speed up or whatever. Well, when they do that, there's a greater chance that they're going to run into an asteroid. Essentially, you can use your offensive driving to run them off the road and into obstacles. Basically, they roll to hurt themselves. I love that. And instead of doing just raw damage, obviously you don't want to destroy your bounty. So we have stuff like debilitating shot, hindering shot, overwhelmed defenses. These allow you to debuff a vehicle, which to me is just plain more interesting than doing raw damage. Plus, it allows you to capture a live target, which may be better for whatever story or adventure you're playing. And it makes it easier on other gunners on your ship. If you don't really have a lot of offensive capability, this makes it a bit easier for you. My only gripe is that I wouldn't mind a few more on-foot relevant talents, especially when you look at overwhelmed defenses. I get why hindering shot or debilitating shot wouldn't translate to ground combat. Shooting a vital part of a ship's system or whatever doesn't translate to hitting someone's ankle better or whatever. But overwhelmed defenses, you're just firing really aggressively, making them easier for other people to hit. That makes sense. I feel like that should apply to ground combat as well. I don't know, maybe that makes them overpowered, maybe not. But yeah, still a pretty great spec, I'm a fan. Finally, we have the Skip Tracer. Now, it's kind of hard to talk about the Skip Tracer without also talking about the Marshal from the Colonist Sourcebook. If the Marshal is a small-town sheriff, the Skip Tracer is a noir private investigator. They even have a talent called Hard Boiled. And since PIs aren't always completely inside the bounds of the law, they do have a few talents that allow them to bypass security. Like the Marshal, they are tough to bullshit and just plain tough in general, though in slightly different ways. They also get a few ranks of Good Cop, which I talked about before, which helps them improve someone else's talking roles. Now, my personal favorite talent, not just in this tree, but in the book, is Reconstruct the Scene. This allows you to examine a scene and just know what the character looked like based off of the evidence around. Like, oh, look at the size of his footprints! They were wearing red! Like, that kind of TV crime scene investigation bullshit. I love it, it's great. Really, as a skip tracer, your job is to help navigate the criminal underworld, do a lot of cunning-focused stuff, and find information. Like a scholar, but in a more active and fun, underworldy kind of way. I'm actually a giant fan of this tree. I have a character all picked out and ready to play as soon as we start a new campaign inspired by this tree. Okay, for the signature abilities, we got Always Get My Mark and Unmatched Devastation. There always seems to be one tricky one. In this book, it's Always Get My Mark. See, with this one, you find the guy you're looking for. That's it, you just find him. You're a bounty hunter, you expect bounty hunting gameplay, hunting being a big part of that, and nah, I just do it. Of course there's a role involved, and it has to make sense, the GM gets final say, blah 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 blah. But you find the guy, that's it. They of course have the section on narrative abilities and, you know, ones that are a bit more abstract and require a bit of a judgment call on the GM's part. But it's like 2 to 3 times the size that it normally is in these books because of that ability. I'm not a big fan. I don't know. It kind of defeats the purpose. I don't know if I would even want it. Especially if I'm playing like an investigative person, or they have 2 specs, one who's an investigator and another who's a chaser, and like why would you want this? I wouldn't want this. Who would want? I don't want this. Why would anyone want this? Anyway, it's there if you want it. Unmatched Devastation, you just attack more. You get 1 attack to start off with, and then you can get more. Oh wow, that's pretty cool. If you just want to slaughter a room of people, that's fantastic. Actually, come to think of it, Always Get My Mark, that's actually not for the investigative types. That's for people who don't want to bother with the investigative types. They just show up. I just want to murder things. I don't want to actually track down people. That's too much work. I just want to murder them. Just bring me to them so I can murder them. Yeah, it's actually probably better suited for the wanton murderer than Unmatched Devastation is. That's weird. But anyway, those are the signature abilities. So, species. We got the Deveronian, the Claudite, and the Calorin. Deveronians are very clever and get resilient metabolism, a nice, unique little ability that allows them to deal with poisons better. It's very situational, but still it's nice to have. Apparently they get a small boost from sniffing sulfur, which is a little on the nose if you ask me, but whatever. The Calorin, I don't find that interesting. I do like that they're kind of well-rounded. I hate to see a species in these books that were clearly built just to show off a particular specialization. I want them to feel like a unique species and have things because that's what their species would have. And what they have is hypersensitive antenna, which is a great group ability for scoping out dangers. To be honest, I'm not a big fan of those species, but the Claudites are awesome. You'll of course recognize the Claudites from Attack of the Clones, a shape-shifting woman that Jango Fett hires. They also get that ability here, and I love the way it works. It makes perfect sense. It's really great. Can't wait to play one. In fact, it is so tempting not to make every single NPC in the campaign I'm running a Claudite, just to fuck with my player. The gear is about what you would expect. The weapons and gear focus more on live capture. There's a syringe of sedatives you can stab into someone, which is great. Of course, they have to have the Mandalorian armor, which I could give a shit about. But I do like that they have a guide on NPC Mandalorian armor, because the idea is that each suit of armor is customized to the individual, so they have guidelines for if you're to create a Mandalorian boss that the players take down, when they loot their armor, what type of attachments would that character reasonably have on their person. There's a brief guideline for that. I like that. It's nice. It's not much, but it's nice. The big standout as far as gear goes are all the unique explosives, both personal and ship scale. On the personal side, we got highly customizable micro-rockets, which can be fired from your armor or from a pistol, and they come in different types. We got anti-armor, explosive, incendiary. They don't have nearly as many crowd control options as I would like, though the Ion, that one's pretty great. Big fan. But the best part is that you can customize each individual rocket, which is crazy, especially when you realize how expensive this can get. You could easily spend 1,500 credits on a single rocket. It's like that Chris Rock bit. When someone gets hit with one of those, you know that motherfucker deserved it. And on the ship side, we have all sorts of wonderful space mines. Concussion Mine, Firecracker Mine, the Connernet from X-Wing, Seeker, Ion, Gravity Mines. Unfortunately, they are not customizable, which I think is bullshit. The ship section is fantastic. All of the famous bounty hunting ships that haven't been in the game yet are in here now. And it's especially great if you're a fan of Fantasy Flight's X-Wing Miniatures game. They got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ships from here. Holy shit. My personal favorite is IG-88's Aggressor Assault Fighter, which has insane maneuvering that puts a lot of stress on non-droids. That's great. I love that they included that. That's fantastic. Of course, there's the usual advice for creating this type of character in the Star Wars world, which includes motivation and obligation and backgrounds. They also have an extensive, to say the least, section on running investigations. You know, the actual hunting part of bounty hunting. And not just advice, they actually have tables on difficulties for rolling investigation checks, as well as how to spend advantages and threats. They also have basic outlines for a couple of bounty hunter focused campaigns, as well as rewards for your bounty hunter. Not just a pricing chart, although there is that, but also something called exploits, which basically means how you take down your target will affect your reputation, and that can provide different bonuses or penalties. For example, if your target is delivered dead, you get the Merciless exploit, which means you have an easier time intimidating certain people, but a harder time convincing others that you're not a threat to them. So, No Disintegrations. It's a long time coming, but it has just about everything I could possibly want from a bounty hunter sourcebook. In fact, aside from the technician sourcebook, I don't think there's a career that's better taken care of in their sourcebook than this one. If you're playing a bounty hunter or thinking of playing one, this is a definite must-buy for me.